What's up guys, Scavenger here back in the video. Today's video is what if Blaineley, Aljandro and Sierra was in Revenge of the Island. So this idea was by Real Team Wall. Thank you for your suggestion. And let's begin. So episode 1, this is where they have to get the items off. So Blaineley wouldn't affect the challenge, I think. Aljandro's pretty good. I feel like Sierra would be friends with Cameron. And with rich characters with eliminations. So I have each episode 50 near the side of them means they're double. And I think Aljandro busts out the robot suit. We can just move that here to Revenge. And the rats still win due to bad luck, and I think this would still work because Aljandro could make him lose as well. Stacy gets voted off, being the most annoying on her team, and Blaineley doesn't strike me as someone who'd be more annoying than Stacy. Episode 2, Truth or Laser Shark. B gets a point for his name, Beverly. Brick gets a point for peeing his pants, and everyone else would do alright. Aljandro wouldn't do that well here. Sierra would do okay, and Blaineley probably okay as well. So Scott would still throw for about 15 seconds. Like, the only new character here is Blaineley, and I don't think Blaineley necessarily would affect the challenge enough. Aljandro and Sierra would be really good here, as they would do very well in the challenge. And Dakota gets voted off like normal. Because I think Scott would want to keep Blaineley around, because he would see her probably easy to manipulate. And Dakota is not very good at challenges, as Scott's third strategy throwing challenges. Episode 3, this is where we have Ice Ice Baby. So Scott still does his mirror strategy. B still does his mirror strategy. Aljandro, Zoe, Mike, and Cameron together. Aljandro is going to try and I think he can charm Maria to his side at this point. Until she turns to the veto. And this is going to really annoy Aljandro, because Aljandro's never really had someone who can take away his charm. So Aljandro is going to be really annoyed that he can't really persuade anyone to his side. And I think the rats will lose the challenge because Scott sabotages B. Everyone votes for B. Episode 4, this is where we have the scavenger hunt. Dakota comes back as an intern. And here, Dakota still comes back as an intern. Lightning gets caught in the tree. Joe gets caught. And then Brooke gets caught. Zoe gets caught. Alejandro, Maria, and Mike are making out for the entire episode. And Mike still turns back into Svetlana. And in the original, nobody was really suspicious of Mike had multiple personalities, but I think this is where Aljandro would kind of start to figure out that Mike may not be as it seems. And I think Aljandro's going to realize a lot faster than Cameron is, because Aljandro is pretty smart, that Mike may actually have multiple personality disorder, so he can use that to his advantage. And Lightning, Scott and Sam get out, and then Brick. So I think this would still count, and this is a double, so I'm going to say the people who cross the finish line get immunity. And Joe would tell Brick to race to the finish line, which Aljandro would follow Brick. So Aljandro and Brick has immunity, and Scott and Sam. I think Scott would vote for Blaineley because Dawn's not called him out at this point, and she's not as suspicious of him. And I think between these guys, Brick would still volunteer himself as his tribute, so Brick ends up leaving the game as well. There's no team swap this time, so Brick's just out. Episode 5, this is the skiing challenge. Scott still throws. Dawn calls him out. In the suit, it would be Lightning and Joe. Aljandro would respect Joe as a strong leader and tries to charm these guys to his side. Mainly Maria and Joe. I'm working against Cameron, Mike, and Zoe. Sierra would be obsessed with Cameron, which Cameron's pretty terrified of. And at this point, Scott would still throw the challenge. He loses. I think Alejandro would be very suspicious of them losing the challenges so easily. And I think Dawn calls him out and she gets voted off. Episode 6, this is where we have the episode where usually Sam goes out. So the gorilla, the Yeti. So Amaru still makes versions of the maggot and they dress up the Yeti. And then the Yeti gets annoyed, and then Alejandro can charm the Yeti. We see in Lights of Japan, Alejandro's very good at taming wild animals. So I do think Alejandro would charm the animal, and Scott would vote for Sam, as he would actually now be trying in challenges. But Scott has a decision to make. Because Scott doesn't know there's a team swap, and Scott has Lightning and Sam. And for me, I think gets rid of Lightning here, as would still get rid of Sam, as Scott would actually try now in challenges as he knows it's very close to the merge. However, this is the Joe and Scott swap teams because that would still happen, and that's that. So, episode 7, this is a mine is a terrible thing. Alejandro would go to Mike, explain that he knows he has multiple personality disorder. Mike would freak out, and Alejandro says don't panic, as long as he works with him in an alliance, he'll keep his secret. Scott overhears this, and I think Scott would work with Alejandro. So Maria, he has 3 votes at this point. Scott would still be throwing the challenge. Lightning would cause a cave-in. And I think without Brick going back to save the maggots, because Alejandro just saved Zoe, Mike, and Cameron. Alejandro does this to try and win good favor with these people inside the alliance. And have Mike slowly. And Lightning would get the statue. And I think without Brick here, I think Joe and Lightning would win immunity, which isn't a bad thing, because they would have to face a tiebreaker. So, at this point, the first would be who would they vote for. So, Alejandro, Amaria quits, and Chris says there's a second, well, before they get that elimination, Scott votes for Sierra, Alejandro convinces Amaria to vote for Zoe. Scott still finds the idol at this point, so I'll keep that in mind. Scott does find the idol, so that's later on. So I feel like Scott would get Alejandro. Zoe, Cameron, and Mike would vote for Sierra because they would be nice enough to where they would vote Sierra because they're freaking her out. Scott and Anne-Marie would vote for Zoe. Alejandro, Sierra votes for Zoe. So Alejandro's the swing vote. Will he vote for Sierra or Zoe? I think he would rather vote for Zoe, so I think Zoe goes and Anne-Marie quits. Episode 8. So Dakota would probably still come back. So Dakota Zoe comes back as a player because Anne-Marie quit. However, Chris announces that there will be another elimination tonight before they can vote again. Anne-Marie quits the game as there is a fake diamond, which annoys Alejandro. Episode 8, Dakota is gets put onto this side. So because Anne-Marie still quits, Dakota Zoe would come back as a player. In this, we have Joe and Lightning. Scott would still steal the compass and bleed in the wrong direction. Alejandro would definitely know at this point that Scott's throwing challenges. And he would get Mike and Cameron on his side. And I think at this point, the Rats still win the challenge. Everyone votes for Scott, but Scott uses his idol to get rid of Dakota Zoid. However, there's a second vote which really concerns Scott. So Scott would get Sierra. They have a tough decision. So first of all, I think everyone votes for Dakota Zoid because she's too much of a threat to keep around. And then Alejandro, Cameron, and Mike vote for Scott. And Scott would convince Scott and Sierra would convince Sierra to vote for Alejandro. So Scott uses his idol and gets rid of Alejandro. And Scott still finds out Mike has multiple personality disorder. So the merge. This is the merge cast by rats by maggots. So we have 6 in the merge as the original. So episode 9. This is where usually Mike gets out of Grand Theft Auto. Scott still blackmails Mike for the entire episode. Actually, he wouldn't this time because there's no Zoe around. Zoe and Mike get together. So I think Mike would actually win immunity without Scott blackmailing him. I think Mike wins immunity, and I think Cameron would convince Mike to vote off Sierra. Even though they don't like Scott, I think they would rather get rid of Sierra because she's obsessed with Cameron. Episode 10. So Mike just replaces Zoe, and Zoe's item was the helicopter. Zoe, Mike wouldn't do that well here. Cameron still wins immunity. Everyone votes for Joe. Episode 11. Eep, you can be worried. Lightning still wins the challenge, actually. So Joe and Lightning have their alliance, and Scott's kind of in the middle. So Mike and Cameron want to get. So Mike gets a plane. I feel like Mike would do alright here. And I think he takes out Scott. So Cameron still crashes through and wins immunity. I'm going to say Joe gets voted off like normal. There's no reason for that out to play the same. Episode 11. This is where we have the eating challenge. Scott still sabotaged everyone. Cameron makes that deal with the lightning, but him and Mike are staying together. Scott gets attacked by Fang. Cameron goes on Lightning's back. He wins the challenge. Scott gets sent home. Episode 12. And here, in the fire plant, Mike turns Svetlana to save Cameron. So I think Mike will actually get to the end because he's not commando, and Cameron team will take out Lightning. So I'm going to say Lightning goes. And Cameron and Mike each get winning endings. Lightning would definitely go for Mike. Scott, neither. Probably Mike, Joe, Cameron, Sierra, Cameron, Aljandro, Mike, Zoe, Mike, Amberia, Cameron, Sam, Cameron, Dawn, Mike, Blaineley, Cameron, Brick, Cameron, B, Mike, Dakota, Cameron, Stacy, Cameron. So they play each over 3 seconds. They each get winning endings. My winner, I think Mike would win, but it's close. It could go either way. Either way, they both would split the prize money. Thank you guys for watching. This is the animation where I think the season would have gone if Blaineley, Aljandro, and Sierra were in Total Drama. Revenge of the Island. And yeah, peace out.